Hello and welcome to Ships Nerds Anonymous podcast with me, DK. As your host for Titanic Week, I will narrate a series of episodes focused on the RMS Carpathia, a ship famously known for rescuing the survivors of the Titanic disaster. From April 11th to April 18th, I will break down the events that took place on board the Carpathia, share profiles of the ship's crew and passengers, read testimonies, and more. On this day, April 18th, the Carpathia arrives back in New York City, carrying its passengers along with the 712 survivors from the RMS Titanic. After sailing from the Titanic's location to New York, the survivors were relieved to see dry land again, though the shock of the tragedy would linger with them. Throughout the day on board the Carpathia, the daily routine continued as usual. Breakfast was served at 8 a.m., followed by various activities, and then supper by 6 p.m. The survival menu for that day included items such as olives, haunch of mutton, roast goose, sirloin and ribs of beef, fried parsnips, potage crissy or carrot soup, boiled and roasted potatoes, quail, ice cream, Neapolitan sandwich, Hamilton pudding, cherry tart, rice pudding, coffee and tea, and of course I'm sorry to those that got hungry after listening to all that. After supper, the harbor was sighted when the fog lifted in the afternoon. However, the weather was rough, with New York City experiencing pouring rain. As Carpathia passed the Sandy Hook light vessel and re-entered New York Harbor, the crew, passengers, and survivors were met with an overwhelming reception. A fleet of more than 50 small boats filled with newspaper reporters, photographers, relatives, and friends surrounded the ship. Captain Arthur Rostron ensured that no one boarded the Carpathia until it had docked, ordering nobody to be allowed on board except the pilot. The pilot was taken aboard by Third Officer Eric Rees when the ship's crew were on stations for entering port. Pandemonium broke out as tugs, ferries, steam launches, and yachts clustered around the Carpathia. Reporters shouted questions through megaphones, with some even waving wads of dollar bills, attempting to bribe someone to bring them aboard. Despite their efforts, none were successful in boarding the ship. However, 5 news reporters managed to get on the pilot boat that was approaching the Carpathia. As they reached the bottom of the rope ladder, Third Officer Rees warned, "Pilot only." The reporters ignored him and attempted to climb the ladder. Rees fended them off, even delivering a strong blow to the jaw of 2 of them. Ouch. One reported devised a scheme by putting soap in his mouth, pretending to froth at the mouth while claiming to be searching for his sister, and offered Rees a bribe of $100. "No," shouted Rees, $200. When the pilot was on the bridge and the news reporters were chased off, Carpathia's engines ran to full ahead as the ship navigated into Lower Bay, still being assisted by some small craft. As Carpathia reached the Narrows, orders were given to stop for quarantine. Officials and doctors from the immigration department boarded to inspect survivors from third class before allowing them to enter the United States. After the inspection, the ship proceeded into the upper bay with the help of a tugboat to assist in docking. The tugmaster received instructions from the Marine Superintendent for the Carpathia to make a stop near the White Star Line pier and lower the Titanic's lifeboats. Captain Rostron ordered the ship to stop at Pier 59, the pier where the Titanic would have arrived as she completed her maiden voyage. Once the Carpathia stopped, the crew was instructed to lower the Titanic's lifeboats. Second Officer James Bissett was among the crew members who left the ship's bridge to supervise the operation. After the lifeboats were lowered into the water, they were towed to the White Star Line pier, where they remained while the Carpathia slowly continued her journey to Pier 54. The ultimate fate of the Titanic's lifeboats is uncertain, but it is believed that by December of 1912, they were stored in the loft of the White Star Line pier before disappearing from history. The Carpathia finally berthed at Pier 54 at 9:30 p.m. Titanic survivors were greeted by a crowd of 30,000 people along with police officers. Hundreds of reporters with flash cameras were present, as well as relatives and friends anxiously waiting to see if their loved ones were safe. Some survivors were interviewed at the custom shed exit, while reporters came on board to interview the wireless operators and other crew members. After most of the Titanic's survivors disembarked, some crew members from the Titanic, along with the Carpathia's crew and passengers, remained on board overnight. Although the entire group wished to continue the Carpathia's voyage to the Mediterranean, the ship was delayed. The Titanic's crew stayed in New York City until the end of April, while the Carpathia's crew and passengers stayed for 2 days as Captain Rostron attended the Waldorf Astoria Hotel to testify before the investigation committee during the United States Senate inquiry. The Carpathia left New York on Saturday, April 20th, 1912, to resume her voyage. Despite being behind schedule, Cunard refused to accept any compensation from the White Star Line for the loss of scheduled time. News of the rescue spread as the Carpathia made each port of call in the Mediterranean and Adriatic. The Carpathia returned to New York in early June, where Rostron received numerous parcels and letters, including some offers of marriage, even though he was married by 1912. Jeez. He was also honored with a silver cup, a plaque featuring his likeness that would be placed in New York's Hall of Fame at City Hall, a knighthood from King George V, and the Congressional Medal of Honor from American President William Howard Taft. Officers and crew of the Carpathia were awarded gold and silver medals, and Guglielmo Marconi, the inventor of the Marconi wireless set, paid a visit to visit Harold Bride and Harold Cottam. Harold Cottam did not remain aboard the Carpathia, and instead he testified in both the American and British inquiries into the disaster in April and May 1912. In the years following disaster, the Carpathia continued to sail her original routes until 1914, when the First World War broke out. During the war, the Carpathia transported Canadian and American troops to Europe. However, in July of 1918, she was sunk by U-boat 55 off the west coast of Land's End. The sinking took 1 hour and 45 minutes. In 2000, the wreck was discovered by author and underwater explorer Clive Cussler, who coincidentally authored the book Raise the Titanic, which became a movie in 1980. The wreck of the Carpathia lies at a depth of over 500 feet, or 152 meters, located 120 miles south of Fastnet, Ireland. And finally, what happened to the men who were involved in the rescue efforts? Captain Arthur Rostron remained in command of the RMS Carpathia until 1913, when he transferred to another Cunard liner, the RMS Caronia. During World War I, he took command of the RMS Alania, which was requisitioned as a troop ship, and he participated in the Gallipoli campaign in Turkey. He would later command the Mauretania and the Ivernia in the Mediterranean Sea. By the end of the First World War, Rostron was promoted to captain in the Royal Naval Reserve and was made a commander of the Order of the British Empire. Rostron was eventually knighted as a Knight of the Order of the British Empire when his former ship, the Mauretania, was on her final journey to Rosyth to be scrapped. He bid her farewell as she departed from Southampton. Rostron passed away on November 4th, 1940, at the age of 71, due to pneumonia. Second Officer James Bissett continued to serve on the Carpathia on the Adriatic service until 1913 and completed a year's training in warships, qualifying as a lieutenant in the Royal Naval Reserve. After World War I, he returned to serve on many of Cunard's liners, including the Mauretania and the Albania. He was later promoted to chief officer and continued to serve in that capacity and as captain during World War II. He retired in 1947 and immigrated to Australia. Bissett died on March 28th of 1967 at the age of 83. Wireless operator Harold Cottam continued to work on ships until 1922. After retiring from the Marconi Company, he took a job as a sales representative for the Minimax Fire Extinguisher Company. Regarding the Titanic disaster, Cottam avoided interviews with reporters and sought privacy while discussing the subject. However, He did give a single interview to the BBC in 1957, during which he demonstrated sending a message on a replica of a Marconi wireless apparatus.
Now, Harold Cottam, there he is, was the operator of the Carpathia, and he received the signal. And here he is, sending his answer now. Now, this equipment you're using now, Mr. Cottam, I understand is the same as in the Titanic, except for the buzzer that Marconi Marine supplied for the Titanic.
Yes,
is that not right?
Yes.
We've got the coil there,
Yes.
the tuning here,
Yes.
and the receiving.
Yes.
And there was the transmission, was it not?
Yes.
With the spark flying from
Yes.
the points when you press the buzzer.
Yes.
And here the charging and distributing apparatus.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Cottam, the Titanic called you in distress. What was your reaction?
Well, she didn't call me. I called her.
Uh-huh.
About 1 o'clock in the morning, after I'd taken the press, or listened to the press, I took a batch of message for her, and with the intention of redirecting them on to her, I called her up. And the only reply I got that she'd struck ice. And I said, was it serious? And she said, yes, this is a CQD, old man. Here's the position, report it, and get here as soon as you can. So I took the position and on a scrap of paper and rushed up to the bridge with it. When I got on the bridge, I contacted the officer of the watch, and the information didn't seem as though it had sunk as fast as I thought it ought to, so I rushed down the ladder and knocked on the captain's cabin, and as I saw a light, I rushed in. And he said, who the hell, or words to that effect. And so I said, well, the Titanic struck ice, sir, and she's in distress. I've got the position here. So he said, well, give it me, and he put a dressing gown on and went. So he said, will you confirm this? Go aft and confirm it if you can.
Which you did.
Yes, which I did.
And when you came back, what did he do?
When I came back, he said, well, you'd better go back and tell her that we're going to double bank all the watches on deck and below, and tell him we're
on our way?
On our way.
As fast as you could go?
Yes, as fast as you could go.
Cottam was offered the opportunity to portray himself in the 1958 film A Night to Remember, but he declined and the role went to English actor Alec McCowan. Cottam passed away in 1984 at the age of 93. For decades, the heroic tale of the RMS Carpathia has been overshadowed by the popularity of the Titanic. However, her story is gaining attention in literature, including a children's book titled Rescuing Titanic. While her narrative is resurfacing, we mustn't forget the brave men and passengers who risked everything to rescue the 712 people in the middle of the North Atlantic Ocean. The Carpathia and her crew will live forever and hold a place in our hearts.